the Christmas watchman. That evening started like any other. Our school was preparing for a big Christmas party, and teachers and students were leaving after a long day of rehearsals. The hallways were growing empty, and only a few senior students, including me, stayed behind to help decorate the assembly hall. I've always loved the holiday atmosphere in school. Artificial Christmas trees, garlands, shimmering tinsel, it all felt warm and festive. But that evening, something felt off. The air seemed heavy, and the shadows from the frost-covered windows fell on the floor at unnaturally sharp angles. By 10 o'clock, almost everyone had left. Only me, my friend Lisa, and our teacher Miss Graham remained. We were hanging the last decorations when we heard a sound that made us freeze. Footsteps. Heavy, deliberate steps echoing through the empty hallways. "Who's there?" Lisa asked, looking nervously at Miss Graham. "I don't know," the teacher replied with a frown. "There shouldn't be anyone else here." We assumed it was the janitor, Mr. Edwards. He was old and grumpy, but he took his job seriously. Miss Graham suggested we check to make sure everything was okay, and Lisa and I decided to go with her. On the second floor, in the longest and darkest hallway of the school, we saw a figure. It was a tall man in a long dark coat. His face was hidden under a hat, and he was holding something that looked like a sack. "Mr. Edwards," Miss Graham called out. The figure froze, then slowly turned his head toward us. His face was hidden in shadow. Without answering, he stepped back and disappeared around the corner. "That's definitely not him," Lisa whispered, clutching my arm. We exchanged uneasy glances. Lisa suggested calling the police, but Miss Graham decided to investigate first, claiming it might just be a parent of one of the students. "Stay here," she said, and walked ahead. Lisa and I stayed behind, though I didn't feel comfortable about it. A few minutes later, we heard footsteps again, but this time they were coming from the other end of the hallway, as if someone was approaching us. Suddenly, the lights at the far end of the hallway flickered on, and we saw Mr. Edwards walking toward us. He looked puzzled. "What are you doing here?" he asked gruffly. "I thought everyone had gone home." We started explaining about the strange man in the coat, but the janitor cut us off sharply. "That's impossible. I just locked all the doors. No one could have gotten inside." Lisa tugged at my sleeve. "Can we just leave already?" she whispered. But then I remembered something odd. A few days ago, I overheard some younger students talking about the Christmas watchman, a strange figure in a coat who supposedly appeared in the school every December, scaring those who stayed late. I dismissed it as nonsense at the time, but now the story came rushing back. Mr. Edwards and I decided to check the upper floors and make sure all the doors were still locked. Lisa stayed in the main hall. On the third floor, the air was freezing, as if someone had opened a window, but all the windows were shut. On the floor, we found wet footprints, large ones, like those from men's boots. The trail led from the stairs to the storage room, where sports equipment was kept. When we opened the door to the storage room, it was empty. The air smelled strange, damp, like old fabric. "There's no one here," Mr. Edwards muttered, but I noticed his hands were trembling. At that moment, we heard a faint creak behind us. We turned around, but there was nothing there. "I'll check everything tomorrow," the janitor decided. "Let's get out of here." We went downstairs to get Lisa, but she wasn't in the main hall. My heart started racing. "Lisa!" I called out. No response. Suddenly we saw her. Lisa was standing by the window of the assembly hall. The glow from the garlands inside lit up her face, and she looked strangely calm. "What are you doing there?" I asked as I entered the hall. She turned to me slowly. "He was here," she whispered, "but he's not bad." We exchanged confused glances with Mr. Edwards. "Who?" I asked. "The watchman," Lisa said. "The one who lost Christmas." Lisa explained that while we were gone, the man in the coat appeared again in the hall. He stood silently, staring at the Christmas tree. When she asked who he was, he replied, "I just want it to shine again." Then he vanished. I turned to look at the tree in the assembly hall. It was glowing brighter than before, as if someone had just added hundreds of new lights. "I think it's just one of the parents or kids," Mr. Edwards muttered, but his voice lacked confidence. That night, we finally left the school. But I couldn't stop thinking about the strange encounter. Who was that man? Why did he appear only at Christmas? The next day, I found out from old school records that many years ago, a watchman named Robert worked at the school. He died one winter while trying to extinguish a fire caused by faulty Christmas lights on the tree. Now, every year, when we decorate the school's Christmas tree, I remember that night and make sure to add the brightest lights, because maybe, just maybe, he's still watching, and in their glow, he finds his peace.